Hello out there, Internet, and welcome to episode 53 of Funny Books Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. I am your host, James Ferguson. This week's guest is Will Allred, the writer of the vampire comic Diary of Night. Will is currently running a Kickstarter campaign to fund the release of the first volume of the book. It's got an interesting take on the vampire mythos, grounding it in the present day. He's also added some fun backmatter that shows the main character's journey throughout history. I've backed the campaign myself, and I encourage you to do the same. If you want to try out Diary of Night before backing the Kickstarter campaign, you can read the first issue for free by signing up for Will's newsletter at diaryofnight.com or willallred.com. Will can also be found online on Twitter as @WAllred. You can also follow along with Diary of Night at facebook.com/diaryofnight. In other news, I've been catching up with a few Loot Crate unboxing videos on Horror Talk. Be sure to check them out under the HorrorTalk TV banner on the site or on our YouTube channel. I do these with my kids, and half of the video is spent trying to wrangle them in. They're always a lot of fun, but they're becoming increasingly more difficult. Alright, now on with the show. Here is episode 53 of Funny Book Splatter with my guest, Will Allred. Alright, so, the way I like to start the show, so we'll kind of dive in, is I know this is a cheesy interview question. I just said I'm not going to ask cheesy interview questions, but if you had to pitch Diary of Night to someone, if you're at a convention floor, someone's walking down the street and you're yelling about your comics, how would you describe Diary of Night to someone?
It's the story of a woman who protects vampires from the worst of humanity and humanity from the worst of vampires.
That is an awesome, well-articulated tagline. I can't tell you how many.
Thank you.
That's you got that down to a nice a nice science there. That's great. Yeah. So that's I put that at the top of the show because I want to make sure people understand. This is what we're talking about here. I selfishly get in sometimes and just start asking questions about stuff and realize, hey, maybe people don't know what the heck we're talking about just yet. So thank you for that. So now The book is what? Is it 4 issues? Is that correct? That's what I saw in Comixology.
Yeah, it's 4 issues. Came out a while back, and we're hoping to get it collected with some additional add-ins. I guess it's kind of, speaking of cheese, it's kind of cheesy, but one of the things that I did with the book was I did actual diary entries. So it was just, these text pages that have, what a diary entry by the main character, Catherine, during, I think this was Victorian England, one in each issue. So those 4 diary entries actually tell kind of a little, text story over the course of the issues. Which is kind of counterbalanced by the story that's going on with a wonderful artist. Gene Gonzalez is the artist. And then we have, I consider him a superstar. He probably doesn't consider himself a superstar, but Russ Wooten as the letterer. You might have read, 1 or 10 books that he letters, like Walking Dead and
just a few of those. Yeah, I might have heard of that book. Walking Dead. Yeah, that's about Christopher Walken, right? I'm not totally familiar with that one.
Has lots of dancing in it.
That's great. So you have a literal Diary of Night within the comic.
Mm-hmm. I know it's a little cheesy, but it was fun for me because I got to write in a faux Victorian voice, which was kind of cool.
Well, that kind of backmatter is fun. So not everyone's going to read that, but the ones that do will get the story a lot more fleshed out for them. So they'll get a little more bang for their buck and get a deeper understanding of the character that's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it, kind of adds a little bit more to that universe that, we're building.
Now, is that something that's going to be only available in the collected edition?
Each first entry, there was 1 in each issue of the first 4 issues. And then as part of the collected edition, I'm going to add in some additional diary entries. In fact, I was querying my email list and talking to, people on the list saying, what interests you? And there seems to be a lot of interest around having Catherine run into Jack the Ripper. So looks like I'm going to be doing some research and having her encounter Jack the Ripper, hopefully in a new and interesting way. no
yeah,
pressure.
Really. Only one of history's greatest villains that you have to figure out how to incorporate into the book. Yeah, that was where I had found Diary of Night. I think I had signed up for some like indie comic kind of like a giveaway kind of thing, and I ended up on your mailing list. So I started reading. I read the first 2 issues of Diary of Night, and then I just started. I was like, the more I read about it, I was like, I got to talk to this guy with what he's got going on here. Like, this is some interesting stuff. So yeah, like how has the response been to your email newsletter? It seems like something I at least from what I get out of it, from when I read it, it's like, okay, you're enjoying this kind of, talking about the process in your book, and then it sounds like you're getting some good feedback from the readers.
Yeah, it's really kind of cool. Honestly, I thought I would hate it, straight up. I just thought, this is going to be horrible.
Why do you say that?
My initial thoughts were, this is going to be markety, this is going to be salesy, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that. So, once I got started, and I can't take credit for this, Tyler James, who does the
Comics Launch podcast. Yep.
Comics Launch podcast, which is awesome.
Be surprised how often he comes up on this show. That I haven't had him on as a guest just yet, but yeah, he's if you're thinking about doing a Kickstarter and you're not listening to Comics Launch, you're doing it wrong, because wealth of information out there.
Well, I knew that what I knew about, or what I didn't know about Kickstarter, could fill an ocean. So I went through Comics Launch, and I went through some of the classes that Tyler offers there via Comics Launch and List Launch. And one of the things that he does stress is building that email list. And I'll be honest, I was probably a bad student, because I was convinced that, this is just going to be a salesy, markety thing, and I don't want to do it. You can't make me. I'm going to go over here and pout, and stamp my foot and all that. But he was totally right, and I was wrong. It's not only is it not that, at least I hope it's not that, but it kind of it gives me a focus for the week, and I can talk about just what I've been doing, or some of the things that I think are interesting, and hopefully other people might think are interesting as well. It's kind of like, I love comics. I really love comics, and so I'm not trying to sell people stuff. I'm just talking about my love of comics with hopefully people that also have, some love of comics, or horror comics, or science fiction, or whatever the else I'm on, I guess, for that week.
Yeah, and I think, well, look, that's where they're going to be there in the first place, right? It's if they don't like comics and they're subscribing to the newsletter, like, they're probably related to you, I would imagine. It's like these are people that they're plugging in because they're interested in the medium, and they want to learn more about this kind of story. So that's hopefully there. Now in this, plus, like, it's weird. Like, I kind of went back and forth on the newsletters, because, like, I'm like, all right, I got enough email, and now I feel like everyone, you can kind of see, like, Tyler James's, teaching spreading out there, because, like, everyone has a newsletter now, for better or worse. But, yeah.
Well, it's funny, because, I am a very much a fan of, Warren Ellis. He has, and I look back through some of my stuff, and he had his email newsletter back in the 90s. And he's had one almost ever since. He has one now. It's called, I think, Orbital Operations. And I've just because from me, there's the work itself, of Ellis, which is great. I reread Planetary ever so often, because I love Planetary so much. And Global Frequency, and also Ocean, and anyway, I can keep going on and on. But
he is a pretty well-known writer. He's got a lot going on there.
Yeah, but he it's really interesting, because his personality really comes out. What he's thinking about. He gives you, it gives a lot more shading to what he's written. because, you know, you can tell, well, he's thinking about it. You know, it's kind of funny because he's really using his list to kind of just think out loud about things. And that takes a lot of guts, for one. But it's really, really kind of cool just to, you know, see him work some things out, and then, you know, you get to see it in the work later. I just love it.
Yeah, what I like with his is when he has like those code names for different projects, and then, you know, months and months will go by and he'll keep referencing, oh yeah, I'm working on this project, or working on this project. And they're all like weird code names, like the, you know, I don't even remember some of them, you know, jet ski project or what have you. And then months and months will go by, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, that huge book that was announced the other day, yeah, that was this project that you've seen. You know, him. Well, you didn't know all the specifics. You saw him struggle and figure it out and break pieces of the story apart and stuff. And it all kind of came together. Then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, it's out there in the world now, or at least, you know, it's soliciting and being and you know, getting ready to be out there. And that's a cool feeling. It's like you're on this journey the entire time, and then, you know, like, all right, you know, you may see some, you know, if you weren't on the newsletter, you could just see that announcement, oh, cool, a new Warren Ellis book. But because you were in the newsletter, you're going to see that and go, oh, I know everything that went into that book, and I'm going to be even more interested. I'm going to get more out of it because I know the journey that the creator went on to get there.
Yeah, and that's so cool. And that's kind of, you know, this is my attempt to you know, if I could steal that, I guess. I don't know. I can't actually steal it, but it's my attempt to do something similar because it's something that he does that I really, really like, and I think is really, really successful.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's easy. Well, not easy, but like you already have some work out there. So for you, it's like I think when I signed up, I got the first issue of Diary of Night. So it's like, all right, like, here you go. Like, thank you for signing up. Here's a sample of the work. If you like it, stick around, and, you know, we're gonna do more about this stuff. So it's like, all right, it's a good kind of introduction. What is it? That first taste is free, right? You know, you get them through the door.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you know, hopefully, you know, as you're building up to the Kickstarter, you're able to use that base of people that have tried out at least the first issue and are now able to, whether they picked up the books on Comixology or they're now pumped for the Kickstarter to start, to help support you in the collected edition.
Absolutely, and that's darn it, you figured out my secret plan for world domination.
Well, look, it's a good plan.
No, seriously. Yeah. I mean, that's really, you know, is I stand behind the work because I think that Gene and Russ and I did some really good work on this. You know, we're proud of it, and the original issues have long since sold out. So and I don't want to diss Comixology or digital comics or anything like that, or PDFs or anything, but I guess I'm a bit of a snob because there's something different about, you know, picking up a trade paperback in your hand or a hardcover and having a physical thing. You know, this is a physical thing that, you know, I made or we made, you know, and I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe. It's just cool. Like, wow, I made this thing came out of my brain, you know, or came out of our brains, you know, collectively, and here it is. So I guess I'm after that feeling, and it'd be really kind of nice to put it on my bookshelf too.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, as much as digital, like I've become a real digital convert, and I can see, you know, I'm quick to jump into that, and, you know, I feel like it's easy to back a Kickstarter campaign on the digital level with a lot of this, but there is an unmistakable feeling of holding a comic book in your hand and being able to read it and flip through the pages and, you know, actually just quickly flip through to like, oh, what was that thing like 4 pages ago, instead of having to like scroll, swipe to get there.
What,
so I think, yeah, like, and plus, like, if you made this, yeah, to see it in actual physical representation is pretty awesome, you know? Like,
totally
there's going to be like a great sense of satisfaction to put that book on your bookshelf and be, you know, amongst any of, you know, all your other comics, and be like, yeah, that one's mine. Like, you could put that right next to a Warren Ellis book, you know? Like, that's
exactly. And then, you know, be ashamed because I put it in the same shelf.
No, you should. Exactly. You made it. That's more than a lot of us could say. You actually made something and stuck to it and made a complete story with a beginning, middle, and end. So that's a big deal, man. You should be proud of it. That's great. You mentioned the creative team a little bit. So how did you link up with your artist for the project and ultimately get started with this?
Wow, it's been years, but it was online initially. Gene's a very successful commercial artist, and he doesn't make or have a lot of time to do comics, but he still loves the medium. And I'll be honest, I emailed him and said, hey, I've got this idea. Here's the script for number 1, which, by the way, is horrible because I didn't follow a proper format. And I told him, this is I tried to say this panel should be, this high and this wide. And it was totally stupid because I didn't know what I was doing, right? But Gene was wonderful to work with. He took the script and he understood what I wanted. And I realized quickly that, I need to back off and let him do his thing because he is a better visual storyteller than I will ever be. And I mean, I like Neil Gaiman's way of talking about a comic script as basically a letter to your artist. It's really like, hey, this is the story that I'm trying to tell. Make me look awesome, artist.
Yeah, really. And I think when you have that, when you're not that constrictive and saying, this is exactly what we need for it, you're, one, giving the artist a lot more to do because they're going to enjoy that and put more into it because they get to play around with it. It's a lot more exciting that way, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and now I do know how to write a script now, thank goodness. So I did get better, because Gene did bring a lot. One of the great things about Gene is he's such a strong storyteller, and it allowed me. I'm gonna, tell you one of my fears here. One of my fears here is to overwrite, have too much text on a page. So I'm always cut, cut it to the bone. It's always my goal to have the art tell as much of the story as possible. And, then I add a little bit here and there. And that's the great thing about Gene is that he can just tell a story visually. And I don't have to write giant Chris Claremont word balloons that cover up, 40% of a panel or something.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that because I feel like that's something, especially in the indie world, that just plagues people, that overwriting idea. It's like, I have seen comics, like I've been writing for HorrorTalk for going on 8 years now, and it's like, I've seen that where it's like there's a panel of one guy punching someone else, and then the caption is, I punched him as hard as I could. I'm like, yeah, I know. I see it.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be that hard, but I feel like less is more when it comes to comics, and because it's collaborative storytelling. You need to the images and the text work together to tell that story, and when you can do that, the end result is gonna be so much more satisfying.
Oh yeah, and it's one of the quotes that I always tell my students is, brevity is the soul of wit. They'll ask, well, how long does this have to be? Well, it needs to be long enough to cover it, but short enough to be interesting. But remember, brevity is the soul of wit, and there we go.
Now, that actually touches on a good point as well, because I think you said in your newsletter you're also teaching a comics course now. Is that right?
Yes, I teach. So I have a day job, which is boring. It's not boring. It's exciting, and I enjoy it. It's IT technical stuff. So the comic creation gives me a nice balance to that, problem solution. I can, do literature and stuff like that. So I teach at a local community college. I teach an English comp class, which of course everybody hates comp, but I hope they don't hate my comp class because I think it's kind of fun. And then ever so often, usually once every 18 months, once every other semester, every third semester or something like that, they'll let me teach a comics and graphic novels class. And they pay me for it.
Yeah, you got to sit there and talk about comics and tell people about comics and get paid for it. That's awesome.
Yeah, if I could go back and tell my 12-year-old self that, first off, what, comics still exist? What? And then, really? You're kidding. So, honestly, it's awesome, because it's a Monday night class, and I look forward to Mondays because I go in and, we sit down, and of course all the students, we're all geeks now, right? And we all, we love superheroes, or we love horror comics, or we love, Star Wars or Star Trek, or you name it. We all have the things that we love. And just to sit back and, I know and I'm using air quotes, I know you can't see them, but it's a class, but, it's really great because, some of the books that we're going to go through, like, Mouse, or, we'll do Sandman, and we'll do, of course, Dark Knight Returns. But it's great for me because, I've read these books many, many times at this point. But every time I've taught this class, I get something new or some new insight out of these books because, the students are bringing more, diverse viewpoints that, I can't even conceive of yet to these works. And, I never thought of that. That's awesome. So it's tremendous fun. It really is.
Yeah. And, I mean, like, I envy some of those folks because they're probably reading some of those books for the first time. And I remember, like, my feeling of reading a book like Dark Knight Returns or Preacher or Why the Last Man for the first time. And it's like, this is what the medium is capable of? Like, holy shit. Like, you just imagine, like, your head exploding about, like, wow, I never thought that you could do this in here. What else you got? And then that just, sends you down the rabbit hole of comics, and you don't come back up again from something like that.
Well, the funny thing is that every time I've taught this class, it's been pretty evenly split between male and female, which I think is great. That's awesome. And okay, I think I've probably mentioned I'm a bit of a fanboy. We do The Walking Dead. We do lots of different books. Planetary and Transmetropolitan, and we do. I kind of snuck Walter Simonson's Thor in there because I am a tremendous fanboy of Walter Simonson and his Thor. So the interesting thing though is when we go through it, I didn't expect to get the reaction I did from. I figured the guy readers would be like, yeah, this is Thor, he's kicking butt, and all that stuff. But even I was surprised at the female readers because they were like, yeah, this is really good. It's, of course, it's written more for a male audience, but there was still stuff in there that they enjoyed, and I kind of held it up as the prototypical 1980s Marvel comic. This is what an 80s Marvel comic feels like. It's Simonson's Thor. So it's I get to talk about Simonson's Thor for 3 hours.
That's great.
1 week. Awesome.
Now, were books like that kind of like your gateway into comics? That do you remember like what your first few comics were that kind of got you into the medium?
It's funny because I think one of my first books that I bought was like a Green Lantern 120 something. It's where he's falling out of a plane and his rings come off, Yeah, that happens all the time, right?
that happens way too frequently.
But as much as I love those, really iconic archetype DC characters, I was a Marvel kid growing up. Roger Stern's Avengers. Oh, that was my. When's the next issue coming out? I got to know what happens. The Assault on Olympus, the Mansion Siege. I mean, there's just so many great stories that Stern put in there. Grunwald, his Captain America. Excuse me. And I am I'm going to go ahead and admit this, but I am probably Quasar fanboy number one.
That's all right, man. I got a nice respect for Quasar after reading the Annihilation event. That I'm like, all right, like, you know,
yep.
Good on you, Quasar. You really are. What was he? The Defender of the Universe? What was his title? Protector of the Universe. Protector. I think Voltron was the Defender of the Universe.
That's right, Voltron. Yeah. And you know, that book. Grunwald, had been wanting to write it for years. It started out as just a good, solid superhero book, but it took a step up when Greg Capullo came on. That was his first regular book.
I didn't realize that was his first. That's great.
And it's beautiful. I mean, there's some beautiful space scenes in there, and the art's just wonderful. There's some really great stuff going on for about 18, 20 issues, I think, while Capullo was on it. And I just love it. That's what made me, fanboy number one.
You'd think that Marvel would have capitalized on that by now and released some, like, sort of Quasar omnibus showing, like, Greg Capullo artwork, and because I feel like they did that for Jeff Johns. For like Jeff Johns wrote like a handful of Avengers issues, and they released a big trade paper or hardcover or something with it, and it was like his name in huge letters on the front. So yeah, there's a missed opportunity there for Quasar.
Yeah, if they do that, they can just shut up and take my money. Okay.
So then, how did you land in Diary of Night, and a bit of a departure from the Marvel superhero books of yours. So in terms of one of your is Diary of Night is it your first book? Yeah. So as your first one out of the gate as a horror story, how did you land into that genre? Was that something you've always been interested in?
Honestly, I'm kind of a pansy when it comes to the horror stuff.
You'd be surprised how much that is the case for a lot of other horror creators. They're just, they get freaked out really easily, but this is kind of how they cope with it.
And it's so my wife she loves to watch scary movies, and I don't like it. I don't like the suspense. It's I don't know. I'm just a weenie, I guess. I don't know. But one of the things that I was thinking about that kind of led to Diary was, what would you do with, immortality? If you weren't going to die, and you had to, you were a blood-sucking vampire, of course, but what would you do? And part of it was the vampire myth, or the vampire, central vampire metaphor has always been around sex. And I honestly found that kind of boring. It stems out of the Victorian, you've got Bram Stoker doing Dracula, and you have, basically women who don't adhere to societal norms at that time, Dracula's brides doing whatever they want, and they're evil, right? So what I wanted was to try to use that vampire metaphor for something else, and I thought, well, I didn't think exactly this, but it worked for Chris Claremont and Mutants. Let's make them kind of persecuted. They're hunted. They're afraid. They don't know. They died, but they're what the heck is going on? And so part of it was her trying to form a community to protect, her new family, I guess. And what would that look like? And then I started just trying to figure out, well, if there's bad humans, there's bad vampires, because they're just, people like us. What would some of those bad vampires do to each other? What could they do to each other? We think about the kind of punishment that a regular old human body can take. Imagine what vampires could do to each other.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think it was the Phoenix Foundation that's in the book, that it's like this kind of like how-to or beginner's guide to vampires, because if you get turned into a vampire, like, I guess you hope that the person who sired you is going to stick around and tell you. But, you know, vampires seem to have a very kind of deadbeat dad mentality when it comes to that kind of stuff. So
I love that. I'm going to have to use that. I'm writing that down.
Like, so in this case, like, you know, it's like, all right, this is how you do it. Like, welcome to your new life here, or unlife, or whatever, and this is how you're how you can continue living in this case, you know. And I don't know. I feel like so many times you read a vampire story and it's like, oh, they're living in the shadows and they're out in the alleys or whatever, and it's like, all right, but like, how do they live? Like, how do they pay rent, or, you know, go anywhere? Like, how do they do anything? So they're just are they just homeless and wandering the world? Like that? How do they get anything done? You know?
Exactly. And I was of course, you know, Buffy was out at the time, and I wasn't a big Buffy fan at the time when it was actually out. We watched it, my wife and I watched it later on probably Netflix or something, but one of the questions that I had was, you know, if I were a vampire, I think I'd probably carry a gun, you know? I got crazy people trying to stake me. I've got, you know, holding crosses up and garlic and trying to splash holy water on me. Might be kind of nice to have a distance weapon.
Really.
I don't know.
Like, you're and not for nothing, but like, your main weapon is in your mouth. Like, what are you why are you gonna do that? You gotta get real close to somebody. That's not like, oh, I can hit them or anything. That's not even like having a bat. You know, you gotta bite him with these small teeth.
So I was thinking, you know, I'd carry a gun. You know, like, you know, I haven't seen anybody kind of do that. And then, you know, in that first season of Buffy, let's see, what was her name? I cannot remember. The blonde actress.
Harmony?
She played not Harmony. Drusilla, Spike, Angel,
Darla,
and
right? Yeah.
Darla. Yes, Darla. In the first season, Darla pulls a gun on Buffy, and I went, no! You know, shook my fist at the sky and said, "Curse you, Joss Whedon."
Yeah.
But I used it anyway.
A good idea is a good idea. So that's fine. Yeah, it's a good point. You know, if you're trying to combat that kind of stuff, it's worth you know, you gotta bring your, what is it? You don't want to bring fangs to a gunfight, right? You know.
Exactly. Yeah. Or a steak fight, I guess, right?
So so I guess if you weren't a big horror guy, like, I usually ask about, like, if there were horror movies or anything like that kind of influenced you growing up, but it sounds like it's kind of the opposite of that.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of a bit of an outsider for at least the horror stuff. I kind of understand. So I tried to understand, you know, not being a fan or a tremendous fan, you know, watching movies or reading lots of horror comics, but try to understand how it worked and maybe try to make something that followed, you know, some of the norms for the genre was probably harder than I expected, because, you know, I wasn't soaked in it. You know, a lot of these guys, it's second nature to them, but I kind of had to try to learn the ropes, you know, read some books. Like, if you look at the first 7 issues of Sandman, you know, that's Gaiman, you know, looking at the kind of the different types of horror, you know, which is really interesting from my standpoint. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm taking notes now. And I think, I'll be honest, I don't know that I was completely successful, just because there's some horrific imagery in there, don't get me wrong. But I think I kind of downplay a lot of the horror elements, because there's not a lot of super horrific stuff that goes on in there. I mean, we have the flashbacks, you know, and, you know, how she became a vampire, which is pretty horrific. But the rest of the book as a whole is, I think I probably fell down a little bit.
Well, let me stop you there, because I think that's the beauty of the horror genre specifically, is that there's so many different facets to it. Like, not every horror story has to have just, blast, terrifying, scary things in it. Like, you don't have to have that. There's more nuance to it. And there's even, you could have just a straight drama that deals with, vampires. You could have, one, like, you could look at something like True Blood. Like, True Blood isn't really like a horror show, but it deals with vampires and werewolves and monsters and stuff, so it gets classified in the horror genre. And that's fine. Like, there's a place for that, and there's a place for Diary of Night, and there's a place for Shaun of the Dead, and all these other things that fall in between, And it still falls underneath that umbrella because of how versatile that genre is. So I do think you pull it off. You do get a kind of, like, very kind of, what I like though specifically is that you're putting a new spin on this vampire mythos. So you're not just, all right, they're a bunch of guys and they drink blood, like, and yeah, isn't that scary? Like, you have more to it, and that's what bringing that to the table is the differentiating factor with this book.
Well, cool. Thank you. I am my own worst critic. It's like, well, I'm also a inveterate Adam Hughes fanboy, and one of the quotes he says is, if I could get in my head what's in my head down on paper, I could, like, cure cancer or something. So I'm getting, 1% or 2%, or, on a good day, maybe I'm getting 10%, of what I really would like. But I don't necessarily have the tools or the skill or the mojo to get that down on paper at some point.
Yeah, and that's, I think that will come with time too, as you continue to write and hone your craft there. I think you'll find different things you like, or different ways to kind of tell that story that may surprise you. You'll figure that out. So that's kind of stuff will come with time.
Oh, and that's something that I absolutely love. I had this conception of Catherine, of the character and how she's going to behave. And she hugs someone in issue 2. I'm like, when the heck did she turn into a hugger? What? When did that happen? And it was really kind of cool, because at that point the character was becoming more real to me, and she was telling me what to write instead of me, running her through the plot motions or something. It was kind of cool. But I was like, when did that happen? What? Who? What? I don't understand.
Yeah, so how did the story kind of grow and evolve? Like, I don't want to spoil the ending, and I haven't even read the ending of it yet too, so I don't want to spoil it myself. But the going over the course of 4 issues, like, it sounds like the character surprised you at times. So were you kind of surprised at where the story ended up when all was said and done?
No, I had to have a pretty tight outline of where I wanted to end up. So I knew what the last scene was going to be, and that's, I think, these guys that write the monthly books, and, they're dancing on a trapeze, without a net, and they just make it look so easy. We're going from one issue to the next, and it all just fits together perfectly, and it's amazing. I had to outline. I definitely had to outline. So this is going to happen in issue 1. Okay, this is going to be issue 2, and then 3 and 4. And that way I could make sure that I was moving toward that end point, properly. And, I mentioned Chris Claremont earlier. I look at what he was able to accomplish on a month-to-month basis, not knowing necessarily that he was going to be on the book in a month or 2 months or, a year from now, or then when he was writing the book. And yet a lot of the, Claremont Burns stuff, or even the Paul Smith, all of that stuff hangs together so well, even on the, reading 30 years later. I don't know if he outlined, but I know that I have to. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of astonishing. I look at someone like Cullen Bunn today, and it's like, you know, the guy seems to release at least one comic every week, at least, you know, and it's like, how, like, what do you do? And I think with some of that, well, at least in the creator-owned world, some of it was stuff that was done months and months, if not, you know, at least a year ago, and it's just now getting to the point where it's being released and stuff. It's like, okay, so like, it's not like he's just sitting there like every month, all right, I got to pump out 30 comics and, you know, scribbling on one a day. You know, it's stuff that, all right, he did that a while ago and now he's onto this, and it's crazy, you know, seeing that how many can come through, and it's like, yeah, I'd be happy with just one on the you know, having that one on the shelf, I think is got to be a great, you know, coming back to what we said before, like that's a tremendous amount of satisfaction, I'd imagine. So
absolutely.
What are you planning on anything else aside for the Kickstarter, aside from your standard stuff like the book? Anything else?
Oh yeah, the book.
From a reward standpoint, or things that people could look out for.
Yeah, I've got some cool things. I think one of the things that I know that there are a lot of process junkies out there. I'm a process junkie. I like to see how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to me. So what we'll be doing is releasing PDFs of the books where we've got the script, the pencils, the inks, the colors, and the finished page, so you can see exactly how the sausage was made. And those are going to be, you know, so that anybody who wants, you know, can get them. There's some prints. We're doing a hardcover, and there's a book plate edition of that, which I think is going to be really cool. What else is in there? I call them the crazy high tier rewards. Trying to do a little shot glass with the diary logo. I think that's going to turn out really cool. And let's see, what else? You completely caught me off guard with that question.
well, at the time of the recording, you have a little bit of time before you launch your Kickstarter. But
that's right.
No,
I've got them all listed out, and I've been working on them for, you know, months at this point, and I'm completely blanking on them right now. So I'd have to look them up on my computer.
Well, I think the book itself is the main reason why people are going to be coming in to see everything. So, you know, and you know, more as we mentioned, you could try before you buy by signing up for your newsletter to read the first issue for free. So why don't we point? Well, like we'll link to the Kickstarter in the show notes of that, but we can also link to your newsletter. Where are the best places for folks to check that out?
If they just go to diaryofnight.com, there should be a pop-up there that asks if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, which hopefully won't annoy people. If not there, I've got willallred.com. I need to update some of it, but they can always email me or find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at WALLRED, you know, at Wallred. And then I'm Wallred at Gmail. So I'm on, Diary of Night has a Facebook page, Facebook.com/Diary of Night, which, got some pinups posted there, that we had artists do, you know, for the original run. And I think the covers are out there too. I need to push some more updates as we spin up for the Kickstarter.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can't stress enough how it's like, just try the book out. You know, like that was it. Like this was completely off my radar, and then I had a chance to try it out. I'm like, yeah, look, free comic. Yes, I will check this out. And it was worth it. You know, so I'll be there when the Kickstarter launches as well. You know, so looking forward to seeing, because I've only read the first 2 issues, so looking forward to see how the rest of the book shapes up. So, you know, I say on the show, I put my money where my mouth is on the show, so I don't invite people on with Kickstarters that I haven't backed myself. So, you know, that's in there too. You. So, you know, people, I definitely encourage folks to check it out there. But Will, this was fun, man. I'm glad we got a chance to chat. Here, I'm always happy to hear, especially someone with their first book. Like, you made it. You made 4 issues. And now you're getting ready to collect it all to put that book right on your shelf. So that's you're living the dream. And then the horrible interview question I could ask at the end here is like, well, what else you got going on? And it's like, let's get through the Kickstarter first. Let's get that. I'm not going to ask you that because it's like, I'm sure you got other stories percolating in there, but right now I'm sure you're getting ready for a Kickstarter campaign that is a marathon, not a sprint. So you're gonna be checking that and going through however, if you do it for 30 days, that's 30 days of madness there. Sure, a lot of checking,
absolutely,
seeing where you're at, and looking at every single pledge that comes in. So focus on that. Then we can regroup. You got something afterwards, you can come back and chat some more. We'll talk to help promote that.
Awesome, that sounds good. And hey, I will send you PDF 3 and 4 in just a minute, man.
I'm not even fishing for that, man. I'll buy it. I'm good.
I'll send it to you anyway because I want you to read the story. That's what honestly, that's what I want is I want to tell stories, and I want people to experience them and hope that they at least enjoy them.
That's the point. So and if you want to try it out, definitely check out the email newsletter to get the first issue for free. But otherwise, by the time this goes up, you'll be in the midst of the Kickstarter campaign. Hopefully you haven't pulled all your hair out of your head or something by that point. But definitely check that out. So Will, thanks again for chatting with me. This is a blast. But that wraps it up then for this episode of Funny Book Splatter. I have been James Ferguson with my guest Will Allred. You've been listening to Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorTalk.com. We've been bringing you the best in horror since 2002. In addition to comics, we cover movies, TV shows, books, and video games. We've got news, reviews, guest features, interviews, unboxing videos, and much more. Be sure to sign up to Steve's Deals newsletter to increase your horror collection without breaking the bank. Check us out at HorrorTalk.com and at HorrorTalk on Twitter.